Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Anim Pakal, Thousandth Moon. She's a 3 mana 1/2 and whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a 1/1 counter on Anim Pakal. Then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Anim Pakal. We are building Anim Pakal as a Borrowers Go Wide strategy, which wants to overwhelm our opponents with an army of gnomes. We can either win by combat damage or we can burn our opponents out, and cards that we want to use to burn our opponents out are, for example, Ingenious Artillerist, a 3 mana 3/1, and whenever one or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, Ingenious Artillerist deals that much damage to each opponent. This means that as soon as you hit a certain number of +1/+1 counters on Anim Pakal, you will burn your opponents for a bunch of damage on attack. Reckless Fireweaver, a 2 mana 1/3, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, Reckless Fireweaver deals 1 damage to each opponent. It is not only a nice Anthem effect, but we also play War Leader's Call, a 3 mana enchantment, and creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, War Leader's Call deals 1 damage to each opponent. The slightly more cheaper version is Impact Tremors, a 2 mana enchantment, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. Another creature that will help us to trigger Anim Pakal's attack trigger is Witty Roastmaster, a 3 mana 3/2 with Alliance, which says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Witty Roastmaster deals 1 damage to each opponent. And when it comes to burning our opponents out with ETB triggers, we definitely have to play Perforos, God of the Forge. It is a 4 mana 6/5 legendary enchantment creature with Indestructible, and as long as your devotion to red is less than 5, Perforos isn't a creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent. Perforos also has a mana sink. For 3 mana, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. We want to accelerate our game plan as fast as possible, which is also building our board, so we have to put a lot of +1/+1 counters on Anim Pakal. This is why we play cards like Noble Heritage, a 2 mana legendary enchantment background. In commander creatures you own have, when this creature enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. For each opponent who does, you gain protection from that player until your next turn. If players aren't that familiar with what your deck is about to do, they might take the deal, which is definitely in your favor. Tarian's Soul Cleaver, a 1 mana legendary artifact, and equipped creature is Vigilance. Whenever another artifact or creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature, and you can equip it for 2 mana. This card is overlooked quite often, but definitely keep in mind that it cares about artifacts and creatures on the whole battlefield. And in the early game it will probably happen that your gnomes will be blocked, so at least you will take a profit from it by putting more +1/+1 counters on Anim Pakal. Rosie Cotton of South Lane, a 3 mana 1/1, and when she enters the battlefield you create a food token. Whenever you create a token, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control other than Rosie. With just one swing you will probably be able to put several +1/+1 counters on Anim Pakal for the following turn. Luminarch Aspirant, a 2 mana 1/1, and at the beginning of combat on your turn put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. We also play Requisition Raid, a 1 mana sorcery with Spree, so for +1 generic mana destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or you can also put a +1/+1 counter on each creature target player controls. Another really cool card that you can play around is Extruder, a 4 mana 4/3 with Echo, which means that at the beginning of your upkeep, if this came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, sacrifice it unless you pay its Echo costs. This is quite a mana extensive card, but you are able to sacrifice an artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So depending on your board state and how much mana you have available, this is definitely worth keeping around to create an army out of gnomes out of nowhere, maybe also sacrificing it into this ability to make Anim Pakal even bigger. Let's draw a few cards in this deck. Low Shell, Clockwork Scholar, a 3 mana 2/4, and prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control, which is already great in this deck. and whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Of course, we play Idol of Oblivion, a 2-mana artifact, and you can tap it to draw a card, activate only if you created a token this turn. For 8 mana you can tap it and sacrifice it to create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. With several gnomes entering the battlefield, we definitely have to play Rumor Gatherer, a 3-mana 2/1 with Alliance. So whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. A little bit more expensive is Aurelia, the Law Above, a 5-mana 4/4 with Flying, Vigilance and Haste. And whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. Whenever a player attacks with 5 or more creatures, Aurelia, the Law Above, deals 3 damage to each of your opponents and you gain 3 life. Aurelia is great in this deck because she has haste, which means that she can trigger Anim Pakal out of nowhere, and we will just create even more value in the following turns with all of her different triggered abilities. Mentor of the Meek, a 3-mana 2/2, and whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 generic. If you do, draw a card. With all of these tokens, we also have to play Benny Bragg's Zoologist, a 4-mana 3/2 with Convoke, and at the beginning of each end step, if you created a token this turn, you draw a card. Of course, we have to pump up our gnome tokens, which is why we play Illustrious Wanderglyph, a 5-mana 2/2 with Ascent, and other artifact creatures you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. And at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature token. This card is extremely synergistic with Benny Briggs, for example, because we are creating gnome artifact creature tokens on each upkeep, which means that we will draw a few cards in one turn cycle. We play Nejali, Sun's Vanguard, a 4-mana 3/3, and attacking tokens you control have double strike, and whenever one or more tokens you control attack a player, exile the top card of your library. During any turn you attacked with a token, you may play that card. If we are not able to draw cards, we are at least able to create a lot of exile advantage with Nejali, and her static ability to give our attacking tokens double strike is also quite dangerous for our opponents. Sentinel Sarah Alliance, a 5-mana 4/4 with haste, and as long as an artifact entered the battlefield under your control this turn, creatures you control get +2/+2. And whenever Sentinel Sarah Alliance and at least 2 other creatures attack, Sentinel Sarah Alliance deals damage equal to the number of artifacts you control to target player. She does everything for us. She can attack immediately, she can pump up all of our tokens, and in addition to that she will also burn a player out. Cyberman Patrol, a 2-mana 2/2, and artifact creatures you control have Afflict free. That means whenever a creature with Afflict free becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. Cyberman Patrol is extremely scary for our opponents because at some point they will be forced to block our gnome artifact creature tokens, and even then they will still take damage from them. Gold Knight Commander, a 4-mana 2/2, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Depending on how big Anim Pakal is, and with that how many gnomes are entering the battlefield, this card can kick out a player in no time. Blade Historian, a 4-mana 2/3, and attacking creatures you control have double strike. You want to win more? You get it. Goblin Bombardment, a 2-mana enchantment, and sacrifice a creature. Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to any target. If you are lacking in protection, you can at least still sacrifice your creatures into Goblin Bombardment, and with that maybe burn a player out or take out a threat that they have on board. Devilish Valet, a 3-mana 1/3 with trample and haste, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, double Devilish Valet power until end of turn. Especially in a deck that will create several tokens in a turn, Devilish Valet is extremely scary, and due to it having haste, your opponents won't see this one coming. As final overrun effect, we play Moonshaker Cavalry, an 8-mana 6/6 with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain flying and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. This white Craterhoof Behemoth can be extremely dangerous for your opponents if you have been able to create a board of gnome tokens, because it will be even harder for your opponents when they are coming in the air at them. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I will play on Anim Pakal. Let me know down in the comments below which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.